do a lot of our legislative engagement. I get to do field trips like this. I try to help get lawmakers into schools so that they can see the charter schools and see you guys working and learning in action. And then I'm going to let Buddy introduce himself. This is Dan Quisenberry, and he is our MAPSA president. So,
and our desk mover. Yep.
Our desk and chair getter. But because of time, so we've got a pretty fluid agenda. We're going to be moving and grooving today. Lots of fun things we've got in the day. So I'm going to let Buddy take over.
Depend on all the people who are part of the charter school world to help us with the efforts that we do. But MAPSA stands for the Michigan Association of Public School Academies. That's way too long to say, so we just call ourselves MAPSA. A public school academy is the official name for a charter school. So all of you attend a public school academy. Just a little bit about charter schools and why they were founded in Michigan. We're celebrating, I think we're going on 32 years now that we've had charter schools in Michigan. But as you know, charter schools are public schools. They're no different than any other public school. The only difference is that each charter school was set up to serve a specific community or to serve a certain type of learner or to provide a kind of education that's not provided in the traditional schools in your neighborhood. But other than that, charter schools are the same as any other public schools. We have to follow all the same rules. We have to have certified teachers. You guys have to take all the same tests that everybody else takes. But there are a few things that are really special about charter schools. One of them is that your families had to choose this school for you. You were not just automatically, I live in Westland, so I'm going to go to that school, or I live in Detroit, so I'm going to go to that school. Your parents, every student that goes to a charter school, your family had to make the choice that, along with you, that's the school that they thought was going to be the best fit for you. So charter schools are unique in the fact that you don't just automatically go there because you live in that community. You have to choose to go to that school. So it makes it special. So Universal Learning Academy is special because all of your families looked at all the options they had. They decided that was the best option for you. So here's where we come into play and where you guys come into play as well. So the people who work in that building right over there that we're going to be visiting in just a few minutes, the state capitol, the senators and representatives who work over there, as well as the governor, whose office is just 2 buildings down that way, they make a lot of decisions that affect you. They're the ones who get to decide how much money your schools are going to get to pay all your teachers and to buy all your supplies and to keep the heat on in the building and everything else. They decide how much money you should be worth and how much money you're going to get. And they make all the other rules that affect students. They decide what tests you need to take. They decide how long your school year needs to be. The one that came up lately that's going to impact all of you, that like the biggest issue that they were dealing in dealing with education in the last month or so, had to do with the cell phone ban. Are you guys aware of what's been going on with that? So what's right now? What's the rule at ULA about cell phones? I'm sorry. What is it?
Zero tolerance on the phone.
In terms of are you allowed to have phones with you in school? You have to. Okay, so when you get to school in the morning, you have to put it in your locker, and it has to stay there all day. Okay, got it. So, did you do that before they changed the law?
Yeah.
So you didn't wait for these people to tell you what you had to do. Your school decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. So that was the big issue for the last month or so. They were debating about what they should do with the cell phone ban there, and it actually was a really unique issue in the fact that there were both Republicans and Democrats who agreed, and they hardly ever agree on anything when it comes to issues involving education, but they all agreed on that, or most of them agreed on that they thought that was a good idea. The governor agreed on that. But there were people that came there and advocated on both sides for that. Some people saying, yes, I think you should ban cell phones during the school day. Students need to be able to focus. Other people came there and said, no, you should not do that. Students should be able to have their phones with them during the day in case there's an emergency or in case they want to look something up or whatever. But that was an issue that they decided. So you were already doing that at your school, but the people in that building over there, they voted that the entire state now has to follow those rules. The other thing that they do that impacts all of you, the biggest thing they do every year, is they decide how much money your schools are going to receive to help educate you. It would be great, it would be wonderful if everybody agreed, everybody over there in both parties agreed, the governor, it'd be great if they all agreed that all students should be treated equally. That we shouldn't say, if you go to this kind of a school, you're going to get more money than if you go to this kind of a school, you're going to get less money. It would be great if everyone agreed. It would be great if they all value you the same as everybody else. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Unfortunately, every year when it comes to the budget, there are certain senators or representatives who feel that charter school students should be worth less money. They just don't like charter schools, or they have issues with the way you're organized or other things. So they say, traditional public school students should get this much money, charter school students should get this much money. So that's where we come in. We are your organization, your advocacy organization in Lansing. And it's basically our job, Marianne, me, Dan, the other people who work at MAPSA. We have to go over and convince the people who work in that building that your schools are wonderful, that they're doing a great job of educating you, and that there's no reason that you should not be worth as much money as everyone else. So that's one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with all the time. And it's a year-long process. So we're just going to walk through. We have a few slides here that kind of talk a little bit about what charter schools are. These are some of the things when we're talking to lawmakers that we stress to them so that they can see the value in charter schools. So these are just some of the basic facts that we think are really, really important. We want them to know that charter schools primarily serve a very diverse group of students, but also a lot of economically disadvantaged students go to charter schools. So we don't want them to have this perception that it's just a bunch of rich elite kids who are going there and what do they need extra money for. The exact opposite is true. So these are the kind of students who are in charter schools right now. 50% of students are African American, 10% are English language learners, 76% are students who are classified as being economically disadvantaged, and 10% are part of the Latino community. So these are things that we stress every time we talk to lawmakers. And then the next one here, this kind of gets into how well charter schools perform. There's research that's done all the time that looks at how well charter schools educate students and comparing that to how students in other types of schools receive their education. And this is a study that we always like to point out. This is from Stanford University in California that pointed out that students in charter schools learn more and they learn faster. That's true with you, and it's true at charter schools across the state. This is not our opinion. This is a fact-based research study, so we point that out to them as well. And then what's the next one? Okay, this is another one that's really important when it comes to us looking at how valuable a charter school education is. Charter schools educate students in a much more effective way, and they do it for less money. So that's something that's very important to the senators and representatives who work over there. So this is something that we like to point out to them as well. Charter schools are 32% more cost effective. And then this last slide here kind of gets into the different ways that we try to enlist the help of everyone in the charter school community to help and us get the word out. Because it's only going to go so far if Marianne or Dan or me or one of our other lobbyists talks to the people over there. They need to hear from you. They need to hear from your families. They need to hear from your parents. They need to hear from the teachers that work in your school, the principals who work in your school, the board members who work there. So all year long, we do all of these activities to bring people here to Lansing so they can meet with them in person. And then we strongly encourage our schools to invite their lawmakers to visit, because there's no better way to convince somebody the value of your school than to actually have them visit your school. So I'm guessing at some point, I don't know how often it happens, but I'm sure that you've had your senator and your representative have visited your school. We get them in there all the time to try to meet with you, meet with students, to see for themselves the value of the education. We have a big event that we have every year called Charter Day at the Capitol. That was that picture that was up at the very beginning that had more than 1,000 people on the Capitol steps. It's held every year in the spring. This year it's April 22nd, where this year it's going to be close to 2,000 people from all over the state. There are about 300 charter schools that are everywhere in Michigan. They all come together for that one big day. This year it's April 22nd. It's a big celebration, and it's a great opportunity for the senators and representatives, lawmakers, to meet with the charter school students. So what you're going to do today is you're going to be hearing in just a little bit from somebody who was a lawmaker, who was a legislator. He's going to let you know what his job was when he was over there and what his job is now, and the different ways that people communicate with them. But we are basically going to be walking through the governmental process today. We're going to be, after we leave here, we're going to go and we're going to take a tour of the Capitol. The House and the Senate are not actually in session today, but the Capitol is open every day, so we're going to walk around, show you all those areas over there. We're going to come back here, have lunch, and then we're going to go down. Some of us are going to the State Board of Education, which is meeting today, and some people are going to go to the Supreme Court. So we're going to be touching on all the branches of government today.
I served my first term and was the chair of the transportation budget, which everybody here knows that transportation roads are an issue in Michigan, right? Really, really important thing. And I really just dug into it and earned a lot of the trust of my colleagues. In my second term, I became the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, which means there's a House chair and a Senate chair, and then a governor's budget office. I was one of 3 people that negotiates the budget for the state of Michigan. At the time was about $63 billion that I was in the room in charge of, including funding for charter schools, funding for our roads, public safety, all of those things. And I love it when groups like yours come to talk to us, right? Because in architecture school, everybody thinks architects are engineers. They're very different in my mind. Engineers are they're very specific to something. They know every little thing about a field. An architect is somebody who's kind of a thinker, a big picture person. I had a professor in architecture who would tell us that an engineer knows everything about nothing, and an architect knows nothing about everything. And when I got to Lansing, I realized I don't know anything about healthcare. I don't know anything about education. I know some about transportation because I've worked as a designer. Like, I know specifications of concrete and things like that. But there's all of these things that you get approached on that you know absolutely nothing about. I think a lot of politicians try to give an answer on everything rather than saying, let me find people who I think share my values and listen to them. And that's why I think it's really important when a group from charter schools come here. The representative before me was a big public school guy. He wasn't super friendly to charters. So a lot of my district was kind of pre-programmed to not be super friendly to charters. And it was important for the charter schools in my district to come to me to help me understand it. I am a huge supporter of charter schools today because of people like you coming and talking to me and understanding how it's affected your lives, how it's given you that opportunity. So, today I've run for Congress. I call it the best loss of my life. I'm so glad I'm not in Washington, D.C. I was Tudor Dixon's running mate. I was the lieutenant governor candidate in 2022, so I've campaigned the entire state, been to every corner of the state, all over the place, and lost that. Today I own 3 businesses, and I work right upstairs. I'm president of an organization called Michigan Forward. And again, I just emphasize, like, if you go back 20 years, owning a business is not something you do when you come from a family like mine, but you meet people along the way, you meet mentors, you meet people that like take their advice, work with them, and learn from them. It might bring you to a place like this. You might be working in an office upstairs here where every day I'm working on issues like charter schools or energy or roads, making sure that we have the best policy for the state of Michigan. I enjoyed my time as a legislator. It's a unique experience. I call it the best experience of my life and the worst experience of my life all overlapped. There's a ton of pressure, a ton of scrutiny with it. It's also incredible, right? Like I've stood on the top of the tower of the Mackinac Bridge because I chaired the transportation committee, and you get, like, they gotta go up there to see it, right? You get amazing experiences. You learn about incredible things. You guys are gonna go see the Capitol today. You're gonna walk in there and you're gonna look up at that dome, and I had an office in there. Like, I realized my kids come here, they look at that as like home. That's unique, right? That's an incredible experience that my 11-year-old runs in. Like, oh, let's go to Dad's office. Well, it's not my office anymore. But so, take it all in. And with that, I just want to open it up for you guys. If you have questions for me about what it's like to be a legislator or that path to it. Does anybody, any questions? Yeah.
How did you begin getting yourself out there in your community? Like, how did you have your name set out so that people were like, oh, I know who that guy is. He did 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. I have people all the time ask me, if I want to run for office, what should I do? And I always tell them, get involved in your community because you care about your community, not because you want to run for office. People will sniff that out immediately, that you're only getting involved in this nonprofit or in this group because you want to run for office. Like, go find something in your community you care about. For my wife and I, we are very involved in Christian nonprofits, like Christian school, Christian radio station, all of these different. So that was my involvement, and I did it because I was passionate about it. And I did it for 12 years. Like, I'm working in business in that community. You meet people through the chamber. I think that this, I would tell you, don't ever set out to run for office. Set out to be involved in your community and to change it. That might lead you to run for office someday, and that's okay. Other questions?
I have one, Shane. So if they were to meet somebody over there, I know they're not in session today. If they were to meet someone, or if a lawmaker were to come to their school, what kind of stories would be the most important for them to tell that might really resonate with a legislator?
One thing you should all know is that legislators are real people living real lives, right? Like, I think a lot of people they have this belief that I can't have a relationship with that person, I can't talk to them. They're real people. They're average people. They go home at night and they have dinner just like you. They have wife, kids, whatever. They struggle with other things. So, like, don't ever be afraid to tell them what your story. Tell them why you're talking to them, why you're approaching them. Don't ever be afraid to try to build a relationship. 90% of the interactions a legislator has with the general public is negative, because people don't talk. You don't go talk to your legislator to tell them they're doing a great job, right? You talk to them when you're upset, right? If you proactively go talk to them as a friendly person, they will never forget that interaction because they don't get it very often. I'm all about relationship politics. If you go to your legislator and you say, I just want to learn what you do, I just want to get to know you, eventually you'll be able to say, I think I disagree with you on this, but I've learned where you're coming from, I get it, I'm not going to agree. They will never forget you. In fact, they're going to probably come to you and say, here's my card, like, reach out to me anytime. Like, you're going to end up in it. It's a little bit harder when you get to that congressional level, but it'll work the same way. Like, they are having negative interactions all the time. If you're that one person who has a positive interaction with them, you're respectful of their time, and you start to just ask them questions and want to get to know them, like, they're going to value that. And someday they might be working on a charter school issue and they're thinking, man, who can I bring in to an event to talk? Oh, I know that person I met from the charter school. They're going to call you. That's how it works. They remember those interactions. So, like, don't be afraid of them, but, stand out, be friendly to them. It's really easy to vote against somebody who yells at you every day. It's really hard to vote against somebody you respect, even if you're on the opposite side. Other questions? Yeah.
If you get the chance, if you get the chance to go back to history, would you still choose the same path for architecture, or would you just change it?
I would choose the same path for architecture because I think that falls into, like, I never set out to do politics. I think being involved in the business community and in my community led me to that. But, like, I would not go back and be like, I'm just going to go into political science. I think that that wide level of experience and range of things I did is what made me effective in this position. I went out and experienced what it's like to work at a small business, what it's like to work through in the construction industry through 2009 when there's nobody building anything and the industry is just dead. Like, I got to experience that, and it made me what I am here.
You were a lawmaker before. Did you ever work on a charter school bill?
Before I was a lawmaker? Or when I was a lawmaker? No. I probably, on the funding side, yes. But because I was the chair of appropriations, I was much more on the funding side. I'm also a believer, like, my job I didn't come here wanting to write a bunch of bills. I wanted to come here, like, to get the government out of my way, so I was far more interested in that spending side. If you looked at the number of bills I passed in the time, I don't know, it's probably 4. It's not a ton, because my interest was more like, how does the spending side of this work? So I don't think I ever directly worked on a charter school policy bill. I definitely worked on charter school funding. Your hands up?
What was your path from like leaving college into business and then into like legislating and all the nonprofits and stuff?
Yeah, so
Like the timeline.
got my bachelor's in 2005 and got an internship at an architectural firm. I worked my way through my master's into 2009. I think it was probably about 2010 when I realized, like, I have this political interest and I'm just this guy who complains on social media and actually doesn't do anything. And I just connected with an old friend who was like, hey, I think I now know where I stand. I think I understand this. I think I have an interest in this. How do I get involved? And he just kind of brought me along and was like, hey, there's a party meeting here. There's this going on in our community. Come get involved in it. So for me, for the next 6 years, it was like a hobby. And then it just became like, well, why can't I be the one that runs? Why can't I do this? That was that. So, from 2010 to 2016 was just kind of me being an activist and enjoying learning more about the political stuff. And then now I make a career out of it, I guess. If I had to go back home and just focus on my businesses, that would be okay too. But for now, that's not where I'm called. So I don't know how much time we have, and if there's time for other questions.
I think those were the best questions.
I have a question that they asked me.
Yeah.
They're embarrassed to ask legislators. How is the salary usually of legislators, and what are some of the best perks that you get as a good job?
So, are there any perks? Yeah, I mean, the salary is public. It's $72,675, I think, which pre-COVID was a good salary. Post-COVID, it's not a bad. Like, again, I come from a place where my dad was picking vegetables in a field, so like, to me, it's not a bad salary. A lot of people who come from the business world are like, oh, it's tough, but you get expense accounts, you get opportunities, right? You have all kinds of opportunities. You can make the job whatever you want it. There's 100 days a year you come here, and you could go mess around the other 200 days, and you'd probably lose your election and never come back. That's not the reality of what most people are doing. I worked 365 days a year. I had to leave my church because it became overwhelming. That, like, there's things like that to happen, but it's an incredible experience. I would not ever tell you to view it as a career. View it as a temporary service you do. Always know what you're going to go back to, because if you have to keep the job, you will make decisions that you don't actually believe in. If you know what you're going back to, and you know that it would be a burden off of you, you will come here and just be you. I always tell, like, well, vote me out. Great. I would love to go back and spend time with my wife and kids. Vote me out. So I think it's really important to be in that situation. Like, have a career, know what you do, know what else is going. You can make a living doing this if you want to, but I think it's really important to have a career and know what it is you want to do the rest of your life.
Does it allow you to do a business on the side?
There are people who do that. My personality in it and my competitiveness, no. I tried for 4 months and realized, like, this isn't going to work. Like, I have to dedicate myself to this, and I was out I would come here and I drove back home. I live 2 hours away. I would drive home every night and go to events every single night. So no, it didn't allow me to do it. There are people here who juggle that and manage that. Saw your hand again.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, have the connections still benefited your beliefs and you as a person today?
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't be working upstairs here if I didn't do this job, right?
Right.
Like, I have no illusions about that. Like, I met people here that have changed my life. I probably, one of my businesses is residential design. I design houses for people. Probably all of the contractors who are calling me for that work they got to know me because I was their elected official. So, like, yeah, the relationships are a huge part of it. Yeah.
You mentioned you had to leave your church, like, due to like the overwhelm. Has there been any point in your career where like you had to struggle with faith due to politics?
I mean, I've run at a statewide level. Like, I've had death threats. I've had kidnapping threats. I've had people threaten to kidnap my children, kill my children. So yeah, do you go through challenging times? Absolutely. Are there times that I wish, like, man, life would have been easier if I didn't do this? Yeah, but I would never talk anybody out of it again. I say it's the best experience of my life and the worst experience of my life all at once. Like, I would never tell you to not do it. I did it. I would.
The top of the Mackinac Bridge, too. Yeah, everyone can't do that. It's worth it for that alone. Okay, Marianne will tell you what we're going to be doing now.
Yeah, so first of all, I love that, and I hope that Shane sharing his experience and his journey inspires some of you to pursue that and think about that. How awesome would it be to get charter school alumni into the legislature so that you can use your voice, you can share your story, you can help others understand charter schools and what they're about, because we can tell you with the lawmakers that we talk to on a consistent basis, they're making decisions about charter schools when they don't understand charter schools. There's some lawmakers that don't even understand that charter schools are free and public and open to all students. They think that charter schools pick the best students. They think that charter schools, just because they are in a uniform, that they charge money. So how wonderful would it be to get charter school alumni to our legislature? So I hope that that would inspire some of you to think about that.
These are former governors. Every time, that's one of the perks of being the governor of Michigan, is that when you retire, they do a portrait of you and they hang it right here. And you see the portraits keep going up, right up there. The most recent governors are in this level, and then when a new governor, like when Governor Whitmer retires, there's going to be a portrait of her here, and that guy right there is the oldest one here. He's going to move up one flight, and then everybody moves up one flight from there. So that was Governor Rick Snyder, who was the governor before Gretchen Whitmer. This is Jennifer Granholm, who was the first woman governor of Michigan. That is Governor Engler. Governor Engler is very, very important to all of you because Governor Engler is the one who came up with the idea for charter schools. He's the one who signed the charter school bill into law. So if it weren't for this guy, your school would not exist. So we're very thankful for Governor Engler. That's Governor Blanchard, Governor Milliken. Governor Blanchard is still alive. He's still around. That's Governor Milliken, Governor Romney, and Governor Swainson. And they've all passed away. Governor Swainson, his painting is interesting and unique if you look at that one, because it's unfinished. And the reason it's unfinished is that he was only governor for 2 years, and he didn't feel that he accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish. He felt that his tenure as governor was unfinished, so he wanted his painting to be unfinished to kind of represent that. So that's why you can't really see his face on there. We're going to walk right over here right now, and we're going to look in at the Senate. This is the House of Representatives here. That's the Senate. We're going to walk right over there. We're going to look in, and then we're going to walk up one more flight, and then we're actually going to walk in and be able to sit in the gallery. So let's walk right over. Front up there, in the House of Representatives, that's where the Speaker of the House stands, because that's the person in charge of everything. For the Senate, the person who's in charge of the proceedings, who chairs it up there, is the Lieutenant Governor. Our Lieutenant Governor's name is Garland Gilchrist. He's the one who stands up there and bangs the gavel and recognizes people and keeps the vote moving along. The man that you just heard from at our office, Shane Hernandez, he ran for lieutenant governor in the last election. He was the Republican nominee, so if he had been elected, that would have been him standing up there. But that's the lieutenant governor's main job, is to be the chair of the Senate and to be in charge of all that. Question? 4 years. So we're having an election this year. Everybody's up for election this year. There's 38 senators. They're all up for election this year. We're going to be electing a new governor and a new lieutenant governor this year, because we have term limits in Michigan, which means you can only be governor for 8 years for 2 terms. So Gretchen Whitmer has been governor for 8 years, so she has to leave now. So we're going to be electing a new governor. But the governor and the lieutenant governor both serve for 4 years. The real cool chair in the very front, that's where the lieutenant governor sits. And then in front of him, those are the clerks that stand up there. They're the ones that write everything down and record all the votes, all that happens. Over on the side over there is where the media sits. I think they're on both sides over there. That's where all the reporters sit when they're covering it. They're up there. So if you ever wanted to come here when they're in session and you wanted to see them voting, you would come here and you would stand there and you'd be able to see it all. And sometimes it's not supposed to happen this way, but sometimes it gets kind of rowdy up here. If they're voting the way they don't want them to vote, you'll see people up here going, "Whoa!" And then these guys who wear red coats, they're called the sergeant at arms. They will come in here and either tell you to be quiet, or if you're too rowdy, they'll kick you out. So they're in charge of keeping the order here in the Senate, and they're very, very good at their jobs. Marianne and I have both seen them, have to be really tough with people. So they're usually former police officers, but they're really good at their jobs. They keep order. They don't let things get out of hand here. They're supposed to meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but like today they didn't have anything to vote on, so they just canceled the session day. But usually throughout the course of the year, they usually take a lot of the summer off. They take 2 weeks off during November for deer hunting season. They take time off over the holidays, and then they take time off when there's an election so they can all go and campaign. So they're here totally about maybe 100 days. Be here to like talk to them as they're voting. She might come over here, but the governor, other than that, is never ever comes in here. She does come over once a year, and she'll be over on the House of Representatives side at the end of the month, giving a speech that's called the State of the State. And all the representatives and senators are in there. It's where she talks about what we're doing in Michigan and what her priorities are for the next year. That's the only time she ever comes in here to make a speech. Where would she be? She would come in and talk and then leave. She wouldn't ever come in here and just sit down. Great question. Yes, Bill Clinton, who was president, that's a great question. In 1997, this is great trivia, Bill Clinton came here, President Clinton came here. He spoke on the other side over in the House of Representatives. And one of the things that he talked about this is at the very beginning when charter schools first started. One of the first and main things he talked about in his speech is how we need more charter schools in our country. And he gave that speech right over there. But that's the last time. It's been almost 30 years, 29 years ago, that a U.S. president came here to speak. Oh, yeah. The sergeant, it doesn't happen very often, but I mean, sometimes it gets out of control among the senators and they'll actually start pushing each other, and then these guys come in and they put a stop to that real quick. It hardly ever happens, but it has. Yeah, like with the national events that are happening. Oh yeah, there have been a lot of bills that have been introduced involving things like ICE and a lot of debates that are happening. But right now we have a split government. The Democrats are in charge of the Senate and the Republicans are in charge of the House, which means that they don't agree on very much. So not a whole lot happens in terms of any laws passing or anything like that. But they give a lot of speeches and things like that here.
Giving you a tour. Most of the building is not public, so you're going to get to see the most beautiful, exciting parts of it. This is the rotunda where the tour starts. So my first question for you is, have you done anything else in Lansing today? Yes. Yes. Raise your hand and tell me one thing that you've done so far in Lansing, just so I know where to start the story. What's one thing you've done in Lansing? What's one thing?
We went to the Capitol building.
You went to the Capitol. Did you take the tour of the Capitol?
Yes.
Excellent. So what did you see at the Capitol?
We saw paintings, we saw offices, we saw many different things.
Many different things. Did you see the old Supreme Court courtroom while you were there?
Yes.
Excellent. This should look familiar in here because our building was dedicated in 2002. And when they built it, the Michigan Supreme Court had been hoping for 30 years to get out of their temporary space. So they moved from the Capitol to a building between here and there, and then into this building, and they made it look a lot like the Capitol building. So some of the colors are the same, the round the rotundas with the black and white floors. And in fact, when the Supreme Court left the Capitol building in 1970, they took a little bit of the furniture, but the paintings and things like that belonged to the Supreme Court came here eventually. Ways you can think about courts are, of course, like if you're a sports official, you have to know what the rule is, see what happens. Was a rule broken or not? What should happen as a result? Not only do we talk about it with students that way, but it's also a way that judges sometimes talk about themselves too, as what the judicial branch does. We have this in order to resolve disputes because people have disagreements about what a law means and what should happen. If you take it to court, it's called a case. In a court case, you always have to have what's called a legal question. So the kind of question that lots of people think about with courts is, was it a crime? Was somebody convicted of a crime? Is somebody guilty of a crime or not? Although there's lots of cases that go through court that don't have anything to do with crimes. Often it has to do with does one side owe the other side money for some reason. We also have family or personal matters that go through courts. So child custody, child support, adoption. If you know someone who was adopted, they were adopted in court. That's how it gets taken care of officially. And then the question that's actually asked most often in our state courts, because traffic laws are usually in state court. It's a state law that traffic laws are. It's actually like half the court cases that go through our state courts every year. It is a lot. But those are mostly things like if you are driving and you get stopped and the police officer gives you a ticket, you can say, oh yeah, I did that, I'm going to pay it. Or you can go to court and say, that wasn't what I did not do that. And you can go and talk with a magistrate or a judge about it. Yes?
You get like charged more if you like after court or whatever and they find out that you did do it?
Well, typically they're the more serious types of traffic violations that are crimes, but we have these things called civil infractions. So they're not to the level of crime. So like somebody didn't stop at a stop sign, that would be like a civil infraction typically. And so because it's civil and not criminal, it's more likely than not. So it's the burden is less. So if you go, it would not, the question is should the person have to pay the ticket or not? Usually is what it is. All right, so because there's all kinds of things that go through courts, there are 3 levels. So if you are familiar with the federal court system, trial courts in the federal system, any remember what those are called? Those are where most cases start and stop in the federal system.
Like the lowest level. It's
the lowest level. They're called district courts in the federal system.
Each city has one.
Well, that's a state court in each city. In Michigan, we do have district courts. That's actually where most of those traffic cases go through. And those are the busiest courts. Those are our state district courts. So are you guys from, what county are you from?
Wayne.
If you're from Wayne County, 36th District Court is the district court that's in Detroit. And then there's a whole bunch of district courts all over the place because there's lots of people in the Detroit area. And so we have district courts. We also have circuit courts that are trial courts. Probate courts are trial courts. And then there's one for if you're suing the state of Michigan, it's called a court of claims. Those are all trial courts where they would decide the facts.
How do you go about suing the court of Michigan?
How do you sue the
State of Michigan.
The state of Michigan? You'd have to file in the court of claims.
Can I do that? Freshly 18.
If you're 18.
Okay.
If you're 18. You'd have to have a friend of the court if you're not 18. And so you'd have to have an adult do it on your behalf. Okay? So, Court of Appeals. Those are similar to the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in their function. And then we have our state Supreme Court, which is similar in function. But all those are entirely separate from each other. So cases move through those 3 levels. And so if you're thinking about this, my example cases is like lots of people have fences and there are laws about where you can put a fence. And adults get really mad about fences. So if you're mad at your neighbor about where the fence is and you can't work it out, you could take that to a trial court. And that would be a court near you. Most cases start and stop at the trial court level. And here's a picture of what a trial court looks like. You've got this is a very fancy historical courtroom. Not all of them are this fancy. But we have one judge, a witness, a place for a jury, the 2 sides, and a place for the public. This is a double jury courtroom. Most do not have double juries. That would be if there's
only like 14 members, right? Or is it 12?
We'll talk about that in the next room. Question?
be able to visit like a court and watch a court case?
There's not right now any court cases going on in our courtrooms in this building. If you wanted to, some other time, you could go and go to a local court and watch what's going on. You don't have to know you have to follow the rules, but you don't have to know what the case is about or anything. You could just go and see what was happening, because everything that happens in a courtroom in Michigan is presumed to be public. So you could go and see what's happening. You have a question?
What was like the most fresh court case over here?
The most recent? What happened in January? They only have court cases in the Supreme Court 1 or 2 days per month, and I was not upstairs. I will look that up for you, and I will tell you. You can look online on the website, and you can find out what the court cases are each month. But I can tell you how to do that. But we'll keep moving on because we're still at the trial court level here. So trial court. In that court, they decide the facts. What does the law say about the fence? Is it too tall or not? One side's going to win. The other side's not going to win. The side that did not win has a right to go to the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals will hear their case. And remember that doorway I talked to you about? That's what's behind the doorway. And there are 3 judges that hear those cases. They hear them in a panel. There's no more jury. There's no witnesses. And they're looking back at what happened before. Did they follow the law? Did they follow the rules? What happened? Were there any errors? If the errors are big enough, should it start over again? Yes.
Those judges both like 2 agree, 1 disagrees.
Yep, as long as you get 2 judges to agree, so you can.
Has there ever been like a neutral one, a judge that doesn't agree?
They can't. They have to make a decision. That's their job.
Can they take as long as they want to make that decision?
The Court of Appeals tends to try to get them out within a month. The Supreme Court has a rule for themselves that they have to get it done within the session. So anything that's heard from October through May has to be decided by July 31st at 11:59 p.m. So they do have rules about how fast they're supposed to get court cases done. You have a question?
I was asking, is this after the retrial? Let's say if they want to do a retrial?
That would be one of the questions. Were there mistakes? Should it go back to the trial court and do over again? But you have a right to an appeal, so that's not always what the answer is. But they could decide that this was not fair at all. They should start over again. All right. So cases can stop the Court of Appeals, but if one side's still going to win and one side's not going to win. And the side that doesn't win can go to the Supreme Court. And there are 7 justices. We're going to go upstairs, and so you get to see what that courtroom looks like. But they only hear the most difficult cases. So did you hear about granting certiorari or granting cert at the U.S. Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar at all? They decide which cases they're going to take, right? They don't take everything that people ask. Happens the same way in the Michigan Supreme Court. And they have a rule for themselves. It has to be important to the public. So things going forward, there's going to be cases that are going to be similar in the future that they need to know how to decide. And it has to be important to courts. Courts across the state of Michigan are confused about what they should do about it. So it has to be both of those things for the Supreme Court to say yes. So in our fence case, there's lots of people who have fences. So they could say, yeah, we're going to listen to this case about a fence because lots of people have fences. Or they could say no because it's pretty clear what the trial court should be deciding. So here's my statistics for all you math people out there. Each year in the state of Michigan, about 3 million court cases. Almost all of them you can see are taken care of at that trial court level at the bottom. Only about 5,000 to 5,500 go to the Court of Appeals, and about 2,000 cases are appealed to the Michigan Supreme Court, but less than 100 end up in the Supreme Court courtroom. That will go up to you at the end of your tour. So, with the Supreme Court of Michigan, all those lower courts in Michigan have to follow precedent. So just like the United States Supreme Court sets precedent for the courts below it, the Michigan Supreme Court sets precedent. And the whole idea of precedent is everybody knows what the answer should be and how to get there, so people know what to expect under law. So here's the important 3 points. Here's my summary. Judicial branch of government. What's its power? Everybody can say it. It interprets the law. And there are 3 levels of courts: trial courts, Court of Appeals, and Supreme Court, similar but entirely separate from federal courts. And each level has a different job to do. The trial courts decide the facts. Court of Appeals looks for errors or I put on here mistakes, and then the Supreme Court makes final decisions.
The Supreme Court can also do both of the things that the bottom courts do? Like, can they decide facts as well, or no?
The facts are already decided in the lower court by the time it gets to the Supreme Court. So if they need more facts, they would remand it, send it back to the trial court. They can't take new facts. So they presume that the facts have been decided correctly. Any other questions? Okay. What we're going to do next is we're going to go into the next room, and it looks like a trial court courtroom. There are some dots on the floor. We're gonna have you sort of spread around, but you got to sort of stay where the dots are because we're going to talk about what's in that courtroom in there. I want to make sure there's space for everybody. So let me get ahead of you. Oh, I forgot. I promised I would talk about Lady Justice. We're going to talk about Lady Justice. Have a seat, but you can from all over the world that see Lady Justice when they come in, and she's used as a symbol for courts internationally. Around the world, most places recognize the balance, the scales, like weighing both sides, bringing balance back into the society through our court decisions. But those are symbols that are used for courts. Many countries, especially those that have roots in Europe, we follow the English common law system. So we have Lady Justice here. She's representing justice, and you can see she has a sword. I always tell the youngest students that come and visit me, we don't ever really use a sword in our courts, but the idea is cutting to the heart of the matter. Court cases can be really quite difficult, and figuring out what's the important parts and what aren't. The other thing is that it shows she has authority. The Constitution gives courts the authority to interpret the law and make certain types of decisions. So you have her there. But the idea is that she is a symbol when you see her. She is the idea that courts are supposed to be fair according to the law. Any questions? Yes?
So the sword is not a symbol of punishment? Or
It can be. That's one of the things that they can decide. But we wouldn't use a sword, especially since in Michigan, under our state constitution, we do not have capital punishment like the death penalty. Capital punishment is the life without parole in Michigan.
Why do we not have that?
Because when they had the Constitutional Convention in 1961-62, the delegates decided to write a section into the Constitution that says that that the death penalty is against the Constitution. We actually, one of the things I heard on the news yesterday, but I know that every 16 years, Michigan in its state constitution has a place that talks about every 16 years we get to vote on whether we want to have a new constitutional convention. Those of you who are old enough and are voters will get to, in November, decide whether we should have a new constitutional convention and throw out our old state constitution and start over again. So you could think about all of those things. Other questions? Yes. Yep.
Oh.
You. Yep.
If the legislators decided that the death penalty was against the Constitution, how come other states also?
Well, it wasn't the legislature that decided against the Constitution. It was the delegates to the Constitutional Convention, which I'm making that point because in order to be a delegate to the Constitutional Convention, you could not be a legislator. You were voted in, but you couldn't be a legislator at the same time. And they decided that other states, because it is allowed under the United States Constitution, other states do have the death penalty. Constitutions offer more protections than the U.S. Constitution. When you're a state constitution, you get to offer more protections, but not fewer protections. So the prohibition against the death penalty in Michigan is that offering more protection and not less. Any other questions? You guys got some great questions. All right, so I promised we would go into the next room. It looks like a trial court courtroom. We're going to talk a little bit more in there. Sort of find yourself near a dot. There's different roles to play, so be ready. If you think you know what the role is, what they would use to make real decisions. But we're going to talk about some of the roles you can have. And I'm going to offer you some help, but you're going to help your friends learn about the trial courts. So You guys over here, you're part of the public. And as I mentioned in here, somebody asked if you could go and see what happens in a courtroom. You can, whether it's the trial court or the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, you could be in the courtroom when things are happening. But you have to follow the rules. And so what do you get to do? You got two verbs. What are the two things you can do? You can see and listen. So you don't get to talk, you don't get to make decisions, but the public is so important that it's written into our United States Constitution and our state constitution. You have a right to a public and speedy trial. Courts want to not only do what's fair according to the law and the rules, they want to make sure other people can see that it's fair. The other thing that you might want to go and see what's happening in a courtroom is, does anybody know how you get to be a judge for the state of Michigan? Anybody know how you get there? You got to be a lawyer first. What else do you have to do? You get elected. So if you're somebody who's a voter, you could go in the courtroom and watch your current judge and say, oh, I think want to vote for that person so they have 6 more years, or if they're a Supreme Court justice, 8 more years. Or you could say, no, I think I might check into the other candidate who's running for judge. So that's another reason to go. We also have here, where did my judges roll? Who's my judge here? I gotta have a judge. First we had too many. All right, so you're my judge. What's your last name? Rights. Judge Rights. Judge Rights. What grade are you? 12. Judge Rights graduated from high school, graduated from 4 years of college, graduated from 3 years of law school, took a big test called the bar exam. You were elected, and you can tell us what your role is. You can just read it or tell me in your own words.
Well, basically, I work for the judicial branch. I hate English. I work for the judicial branch of government, and we interpret the law and make court cases.
In court
Judges
cases.
interpret the law, and in court cases, they make decisions about what the law means.
So you're the one that makes decisions about the law in the courtroom. All right. So we have our defense attorneys, and we're going to pretend. Whoop, wrong. You're the defense attorney. You're the plaintiff's attorney, and we're going to pretend that this is the fence case, and you're defending Mr. Wall has the big fence, Ms. Measure hates the fence and wants it to go away. So how would you start your court case? Plaintiff would be for Ms. Measure, who wants the wall, wants it gone, and you get to start. Nice strong voice. Just read what it says.
Do I get up?
Yes, please. You don't stay right there. You can't wander about. You got to stay right there.
Your Honor, I am here for Miss Measures.
Keep going.
She wants Mr. Wall to take down the fence. She thinks it is taller than the laws allow.
Okay, so just like our judge, you went to law school. You learned how to read laws and think about what they mean and how you can argue your case. You found a way that the law says that the fence is too tall. Now you're going to represent Mr. Wall.
The fence. He thinks his fence follows the law. It is not too tall.
All right, so you went to law school just like the other two, and you figured out a way that you can have the law say that the fence is not too tall. All right. Now, in order to get information in here so we can have a decision, we have our witness, and our witness. Are you guys in the jury pool here? Well, we have our witness. Our witness would have to. It'll stop. You have to just not touch it. No, you don't. That would not be you. That would be the attorneys that get to a job. You would have to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Right hand to God, that I am telling you the full, honest, and impartial truth.
All right, so you have to swear to that, and then you can tell us what you would do.
I am here to tell the truth about what I saw or heard. I work for local government. I make sure fences follow the law in our city.
I object.
You object. Oh my goodness. Now you can't object to what the witness says. You can object to what the other attorney says. And do you know who gets to decide whether to sustain it or not? It would be the judge who decides whether it gets sustained or not. All right? All right. Last thing here, we have our jury. Our jury. What is your job? Well, if it's a criminal case, so what do you get to do? You decide the facts. So the judge decides the law, and our judge here would tell our jury what they need to decide and what the law means. You would look at what the witness says and listen to what the witness says, and you would get together and decide if it's a criminal case, beyond a reasonable doubt, whether somebody committed the crime or not. The judge would give you instructions. If it's a civil case, like our fence, you would be the ones that would get to decide whether Mr. Ball gets to keep his fence or not according to the law. All right? So anybody know how you get to be on a jury? Have you learned about that? How do you get to be on a jury in the state of Michigan? All right, yes. They send you a letter. It's called a jury summons. Don't ignore your jury summons, especially those of you who are 18. If you're 18 and you have a state ID or a driver's license, they get the original list from the Secretary of State's office. So if you have a state ID or a driver's license, you potentially could be there. It's picked randomly. They send it to the jury board, and then you would get a jury summons. And you would have to answer questions. Are you a U.S. citizen? Can you communicate in English? Are you physically and mentally able? Do you have a felony on your record? And what's the last thing? There's 5 things. That's another question that they will ask you. Are you related? Related to the defendant. That usually is once you get to the court and they have jury selection when they would ask that, because they ask some general questions on the jury summons. So if you are 18 and you get one of those and you're still in school, there is a state law where you have to contact the court, but then they have to put it at a time when you are on school vacation, so it doesn't interrupt your schooling. So you get that. You would come into court. Have any of our adults in here ever served on a jury? Gotten picked for a jury? So for our parents, okay. So, did you get selected for a jury? You were dismissed. Okay. So you get called. There's a big pool. They sometimes, like, I've only gotten called a couple of times, but my jury services have been on calling on the phone and they didn't need my number. I was super disappointed because I talk about serving on a jury all the time. The next thing that would happen, if they call your number, you would come in, they would ask you questions. They select the people who they think are going to be most fair. And then you have to listen to the evidence, listen to what the judge says, and then once the case has been rested, they go and decide. If it's a criminal case, anybody know how many have to agree with the criminal case to find somebody guilty? It has to be unanimous. So if it's a felony, a serious case, it has to be at least 12. If it's a less serious case, a misdemeanor, it's at least 6. If it's a civil case, which is typically about money, it's not unanimous. It's either 4 of 6 or 5 of 6. Because what's more important, your liberty, possibly going to jail or prison, or your money? So if it's with a criminal case, your liberty is at stake. Question? It's considered contempt of court if you don't go when you're supposed to, so you want to go. Contempt of court is that you made the court really mad and there's a fine in jail. So if you don't go, usually what happens first is they would have what's called a show cause hearing, and you have to go and talk to the judge about why you didn't come in the first place, and then they would give you another date. But really, it could be a contempt of court if you don't show. But our court system in the United States runs on needing juries, and so they know that they're asking a lot of people. Yes?
So like when you get chosen, it's like mainly mandatory, right?
If you get yes, you have to go if you get chosen. So you have to respond. You can't just ignore it. Yes?
I'm pretty sure, I don't know the exact rules, I'm pretty sure if it's like a really big case, that they get to basically hide the jury from the media.
Well, there's all kinds of rules about there's rules about protecting the jury. And so some of the things that happen are like, you can't, during jury selection, you can't have a phone with taking pictures, because they don't want to have pictures in the courtroom that potentially could show who the witness or the jurors are and things like that. So they do protect the jury. Mahogany here, it's walnut in the capital, and it's meant to look a bit like the casework that's behind that there. But you can see that all 7 justices hear every case. And then here's my question for you. When you're in school, do you sit where your teachers decide, or do you get to decide? It depends on the teacher. Do you have lockers in your school? Yes. You gotta put that away. Do you write essays? Yes. All right. Do you read a lot? If you like all of those things, think about becoming a Supreme Court justice someday. You have to go to law school for 5 years, just like any other type of judge in Michigan. But you can see all 7 justices are sitting by their name tags. Once a week, they have what's called conference. They have a meeting where they have to sit in the right order, even though they're behind closed doors, and it's not working before they become Supreme Court justices. Yes. His family has the Bernstein law firm. He was a member of that, but once you become a judge, you can't be part of a law practice. So he's no longer part of the law practice, but he's still part of the family. So, and there are rules about when you become a judge that you can't hear cases before, like if the case, the person representing it is your family member, you would be able to hear the case. So like Justice Kavanaugh, before she became a justice of the Supreme Court, she was an appellate and attorney, and her dad was a justice on the Supreme Court, so he couldn't hear those cases. Yes?
What's appellate?
Appellee. They're the 2 sides. You remember downstairs in our pretend courtroom, they were the plaintiff and the defendant. The 2 sides are called something different here. They're called the appellant and the appellee. You might guess that that's related to the word appeal. The appellant is the side that lost at the Court of Appeals. So if you think of the triangle, you got trial court, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court. The appellant wants a new answer, so they're bringing the case. They would get to go first, and their attorney would say something very formal. It's like a formal conversation. When they start their case, they would say, "May it please the court, my name is, I represent. My client thinks the Court of Appeals was incorrect for this reason, and this reason, and this is what should happen instead." They'd, of course, be facing the court and not you, but they save out some time. They don't get extra time, but they can try and save some time from what they've been given. So many questions, they don't get to have their extra time or their time at the end. Other questions? Yes?
How likely is it that the person who's against the court to win?
Start it again, I didn't understand.
How likely is it that the person who's against the court to win? Like who's saying that
Any of the court cases that the Supreme Court decides to hear in the courtroom could be decided either way. Because they have, remember there were like 2,000 cases that people ask, please hear our case. In 90% of them, they're like, no. We like the Court of Appeals decision, it's gonna stand. In about 10% of cases, the court will be like, we can decide this by order, or we need to make a decision in some other way. And so usually by the time that it gets here, you can legitimately argue either side of the case. That's happened. An example, any type of case that can be heard by the lower courts, unless someone's given up their right to appeal, can be heard by the court. So criminal cases, civil cases, so like insurance cases. There's when they change the when they change the marijuana laws, there's been a lot of marijuana cases. There's been medical malpractice, tax cases, family law cases, so related to divorce, related to probate, so like wills, estates, and trusts. And those cases, someone was asking about cases against the state of Michigan. They're going to, in March, if you've heard about the Enbridge case, that's one of them that's on. They actually have 3 cases on the docket for the Enbridge cases. I'm trying to think what else is on. I looked at March not that long ago. I should know more than that, but those are the ones I remember. So all kinds of cases. Yes. I'm sorry?
When was the last case?
Last heard in here in the courtroom was January 21, was the last time they heard cases. So lots of people think about trial courts. Trial court judges are in their courtroom like every day of the week. They have lots of cases, a short amount of time for each case. Appellate courts run differently. It's fewer cases, but a lot of time for each, because they've been decided already at least once, if not twice, by the time it gets to the Supreme Court. And so they're really looking into all the issues, and they have to think about it, and they have to write really long opinions and things like an opinion by the Michigan Supreme Court can be like 100 pages. And all 7 are working together. So it's like doing a group project with 6 other people all the time. So it takes a lot longer. Yes? Well, usually when they're that long, it means it's not a unanimous decision. So the justices, when they decide, they can all decide with the majority and one person will write it. Although they get lots of input from other people on, can you change this, and I'll sign on things. You can also have a concurrence where they say, I agree with what your answer is in the case, but I think this part, I would do it differently, or I think you need to expand on this part, and they'll write a concurrence. Then there's also the idea of dissent, and dissent is when I don't agree with what your answer is and I don't agree with how you got there. So you can have the majority opinion, and that's what counts, but then you have all these other people who are writing. So if they all write, 40 or 50 pages, it adds up after a while. But yeah, they do a lot of reading and writing. I'm sorry? Denying the case. 90% of they deny the case and they don't even get to writing a decision. After that, they don't count it that way. So I can't give you an answer. They do keep statistics, but that's not how they count it. Did I see another hand? It's like 1:30 and I know you need to be on your way. No. Okay. So you do have a question? Last question. I'll let you have the last word.
What's the salary?
What's the salary of a justice? It's set by a committee of the legislature, and it used to be really easy for me to remember because they didn't get a raise in 20 years. And then they got a raise recently within the last 5 years. And so it's like $180-something thousand per year. But the thing is that because they were worried that's, attorneys can make a lot of money if they're a successful attorney.
All right, so what's your impression of the field trip? What did you learn today?
It was really nice, and I liked how we learned about all the different branches and what people do in the government and how it looks and how all the everything looks around us.
What is the most valuable thing you learned today?
Probably about legislative branches and all of our branches in our government.
What did your field trip involve today? What did you visit?
We went to MAPSA, and it was the Capitol building.
And what did you learn today in MAPSA? What did they teach you about?
They're teaching us about the different roles that you have there, and the different buildings that there is, and things that you could do.
All right, thank you. Did this inspire you for anything?
Yeah, it inspired me. If someone wanted to go in that politics, you could do it if you wanted to.
My experience was so good. I loved everything we learned. I loved the branches we learned, the legislative, executive, the judicial. I love seeing the Supreme Court and all these courts in this building. I learned so much and the roles you can have in this building, how where the judges go, where the defendants and where the witnesses go. I learned a lot from this experience, this field trip, and I just loved it a lot.
My feedback on this field trip is that I have truly realized that there is no school stronger than Universal Learning Academy, especially as a charter school that it is. There's a huge misconception that charter schools are picky people, that they have more than public schools have. But that misconception is completely incorrect. We are actually the fighters who fight for our stance and what we have within the school realm of education. And today, when we address the Michigan Education Board, we really realized that there is nothing more powerful than advocacy. There is nothing more powerful than using our voice as students to teach these people who are uneducated about what it truly means to come from a charter school, about the opportunities that we lose and what we actually gain from having limitations as students from charter schools.
This was a fun field trip. I learned a lot. And I recommend this field trip. I really like how they encouraged us to talk about the charter schools and how our charter schools and the politics as well.
The food's a great experience.
The food. It was a really good experience.
It was a great experience. We learned a lot. We learned about politics. The Capitol was great. It was very beautiful. It was very beautiful. We actually got to see a bunch of the Capitol. I mean, I've been to the Capitol myself, but I never really got to see inside. So yeah, this was a great experience. Not just to see, but to actually learn.
What's some of the inspirational things that happened to you today?
Wow, that's too much to name, honestly. that one man that taught us about at the start. Shane, Shane Fernandez. I'm pretty sure he taught us about his life, how he was actually an architect and then grew up to serve. I'm pretty sure was a legislator. It really had an effect on me.
And what's you coming back? How are you different from you going to this field trip?
All different. The same as ever.
Look at politics differently?
I did. I actually did learn I did learn a lot more about politics. I learned originally I wanted to be a lawyer, so seeing the courtroom, like inside the courtroom, learning a bit more about the three branches, it really brought a lot to me.